My wife cheated, so I took revenge and sued everyone involved. For the first 6 years of our marriage, I thought I had everything a man could ask for: an amazing career, a beautiful home, and a loving wife, Emily. We had been together for almost a decade, having met in college. Back then, she was the girl I thought was out of my league, charming, intelligent, and with an energy that made every room brighter. I considered myself lucky to have her, and I worked tirelessly to build a life we could both be proud of. I was an attorney, which meant long hours and high stress, but I didn't mind. I was providing for us, ensuring we had financial security and a future free of worries. Emily, on the other hand, had chosen a career in event planning, something she was passionate about. I encouraged her every step of the way, even helping her land her first big clients through my connections. I never once doubted that we were a team, pushing each other toward success. We weren't perfect, of course. No marriage is. There were times when work kept me late, and she'd complain that I didn't spend enough time with her. I made an effort, planning spontaneous getaways, date nights, and small surprises to remind her how much I loved her. In return, she always reassured me that she understood, that she appreciated my hard work, and that we were in this together. Looking back, I see now how blind I was. There were signs, subtle ones at first. The sudden increase in late nights, the unexplained weekend work trips, the way she'd keep her phone glued to her side, smiling at messages she never shared. I chalked it up to stress from her career. After all, her business was thriving, and success often came with added responsibilities. Then came the changes in the bedroom. At first, I thought she was just tired, but over time, it became clear she was pulling away. She stopped initiating intimacy, and when I did, she seemed distracted, like she wasn't really there. I asked if something was wrong, if she was unhappy. She dismissed my concerns, telling me I was overthinking things. "Of course I love you," she'd say with a kiss on the cheek, but somehow, it felt rehearsed. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But the truth was about to shatter everything I thought I knew. It all started with a simple accident. One evening, Emily left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. That wasn't unusual, except that it vibrated constantly with notifications. I wasn't the type to snoop. I respected her privacy, even when small doubts crept into my mind. But something about that night felt different. The texts kept coming, one after another, lighting up the screen with names I didn't recognize. Then, I saw it. A message preview from someone named Nathan. "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again, babe." My stomach twisted. My hands felt numb. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe it was a client, a work friend, a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew. Heart pounding, I picked up her phone. Her lock screen was on, but a second message popped up. "I miss you already. Wish I could wake up next to you instead of him." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The words swam in my head, making me dizzy. Instead of him, that meant me. My wife, my Emily, the woman I had loved for 10 years and married 6 years ago, was sleeping with another man. I didn't even realize I was gripping the phone so tightly until I heard the shower turn off. Panicking, I placed it back on the counter exactly where she left it and sat down at the table, my mind racing. What should I do? Should I confront her immediately? Demand answers? The rage bubbling inside me screamed for action, but something held me back. I was a lawyer. I knew better than to make emotional decisions without solid proof. Confronting her now would only give her a chance to lie, to manipulate the situation, to gaslight me into believing it was nothing. No, I needed to be smart. I needed to know everything before I made my move. Emily walked into the kitchen minutes later, dressed in her bathrobe, towel drying her hair. She smiled at me like nothing had happened, kissed my forehead, and picked up her phone. "Long day?" she asked casually. I forced myself to nod, keeping my expression neutral. "Yeah, just exhausted." She leaned against the counter, scrolling through her messages, completely unaware that I knew her secret. "I've got an early meeting tomorrow, so I might head to bed soon." I stared at her, trying to see her the way I used to. the woman I loved, my partner in everything. But now, all I saw was a liar. A cheater. A woman who spent her nights in another man's arms and then came home to me as if nothing had happened. I clenched my fists under the table, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. Not yet, I told myself. Play it cool. The next few days were torture, but I stayed patient. I needed irrefutable proof, and I knew just how to get it. I started small. Whenever she left her phone unattended, I took mental notes of her passcode. She had changed it recently, but after watching her enter it a few times, I cracked it, 0721. That night, while she was asleep, I unlocked her phone and went straight to her messages. What I found nearly made me throw up. Hundreds of texts, romantic messages, explicit ones, plans to meet in hotels. I scrolled through weeks, months, of their conversations. She had been sleeping with this man for at least a year. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my email. The texts alone were damning, but I needed more. I checked her call logs. Dozens of calls to Nathan, many late at night when I thought she was asleep beside me. Then, I found the photos. Pictures of the two of them together, smiling, kissing, in bed. I bit down hard on my lip, my whole body shaking with rage. I had all the proof I needed. But I wasn't just going to confront her and walk away. No, Emily had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And I was going to make sure she regretted it. As a lawyer, I knew that collecting evidence from her phone might not be enough in court if things got ugly. I needed a professional. The next day, I hired a private investigator to follow her, track her movements, and gather photographic evidence. Within a week, he provided me with hotel receipts, surveillance footage, and even audio recordings from their meetings in public places. The evidence was airtight. Emily had no idea that every lie she told, every excuse she made, was being recorded and documented. I had enough to ruin her. Not just personally, but legally, financially, and socially. And I was about to do exactly that. With all the evidence in my hands, I spent the next few days carefully planning my next move. I wasn't just going to expose Emily. I was going to make sure she paid for what she had done. I started by reviewing my legal options. As a lawyer, I knew the power of information. Emily's affair wasn't just a betrayal, it was a potential goldmine in court. I had always been the primary breadwinner. Our house, cars, and savings, everything was mostly in my name. If I played this right, I could divorce her and walk away with nearly everything, leaving her with nothing. But that wasn't enough. Emily had humiliated me. She had lied to my face for over a year, living a double life while pretending to be my loving wife. I needed her to feel the same pain and humiliation she had put me through. And I had the perfect way to do it. The first part of my plan was simple. I let her believe nothing had changed. For the next week, I acted like the same devoted husband she thought she had fooled. I kissed her goodbye in the morning, made dinner together in the evenings, and even talked about taking a vacation. But behind the scenes, I was setting her up for the ultimate downfall. I secretly met with my divorce lawyer and handed over all the evidence, the texts, the photos, the surveillance reports. We drafted the divorce papers, making sure the terms were brutal for her. Since we lived in a fault-based divorce state, infidelity would work heavily in my favor. She would lose most of our assets, any claim to spousal support, and potentially even her job, since her affair partner, Nathan, was a colleague of hers at work. Then, I made another move. I reached out to Nathan's wife. Yes, Nathan was married too. I found his wife, Rachel, on social media. It took some digging, but I finally got her number and sent her a simple message. I think you deserve to know the truth about your husband and my wife. Call me when you're ready. It didn't take long for her to respond. Rachel and I met in a quiet cafe 2 days later. She was a beautiful woman in her early 30s, looking completely blindsided and heartbroken. When I showed her the proof, the texts, the photos, she covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. I had no idea, she whispered, shaking her head. How long? At least a year, I said grimly. Maybe more, She closed her eyes, taking deep, shaky breaths. That bastard. We talked for nearly an hour, and by the end of it, we had a plan. She wasn't just going to divorce Nathan. She was going to expose both of them. Rachel worked in the same company as Nathan and Emily. She was well respected, and when she went to HR with the evidence of their workplace affair, it sent shockwaves through their company. Nathan was fired immediately for violating company policy. Emily, she was put under investigation, and soon after, she was forced to resign to avoid a public scandal. But the real humiliation came when Rachel leaked the affair online. She posted the screenshots and photos in a private Facebook group for their company's employees. Within hours, rumors spread like wildfire, and soon, everyone in Emily's professional and social circles knew what she had done. She became a pariah. Friends stopped talking to her. Her professional reputation was in shambles. And she had no idea I was behind all of it. The night before I served her the papers, I planned one last surprise. Emily came home that evening, looking exhausted and stressed. She had been getting strange looks at work all day, and I could tell she was starting to suspect that something was wrong. She walked into the kitchen, rubbing her temples. God, today was horrible. I think someone at work found out about, I played dumb. Found out about what? She hesitated, then forced a smile. Nothing, babe, just work drama. I almost laughed at the audacity she had to keep lying. But I stayed calm. Instead of confronting her, I simply smiled and said, "Why don't we have a nice dinner tonight? Just the two of us." She seemed relieved. That sounds perfect. I cooked her favorite meal, poured us wine, and for the last time, pretended to be the loving husband she had betrayed. She had no idea that this would be the last dinner we ever had together. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I packed my bags, took all my important documents, and left. Then, I had a courier deliver the divorce papers to her office right in the middle of the day. She called me 20 times before I finally answered. "What the hell, James?" she screamed. "Why are you doing this?" I let out a cold chuckle. "Why? Because you cheated on me, Emily. I know everything." She fell silent. I didn't mean to. Save it. I cut her off. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. You're not getting a cent from me. You're going to be left with nothing, Emily. Just like you deserve." She started sobbing. "Please, James. I love you. We can fix this. I'll do anything." I smiled, relishing the desperation in her voice. "You already did everything, Emily. And now, you're going to live with the consequences." Then, I hung up. And just like that, I was free. The days following the divorce were a blur. Emily tried to reach out to me multiple times, leaving desperate voicemails, texting pleading messages. She wanted to meet, to explain, to apologize, but I wasn't interested. There was nothing she could say that would change what had happened. I had spent the better part of a decade building a life with her, trusting her with everything. I couldn't just turn that off, but I wasn't going to allow her to drag me back into her web of lies. The damage had been done, and I had already exacted my revenge. As the weeks went on, I watched her spiral. Emily was no longer the woman I had married. The professional image she had carefully crafted was in ruins. The affair, once a private betrayal, was now a public spectacle. Her career, once thriving, had crumbled. The company she had worked for, after firing Nathan, had placed her under investigation and offered her a severance package in exchange for her resignation. Her friends abandoned her. Her reputation was shattered. But the most heartbreaking thing for Emily was how quickly everyone turned their backs on her. People she had considered close friends now treated her with disdain, offering only cold shoulders and harsh words. Her social media accounts, once filled with glamorous photos and accolades, were now littered with scathing comments, and her name had become synonymous with dishonesty and betrayal. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, not for the pain I had caused her, but because I knew she deserved it. She had destroyed the trust we built together, and now, she was facing the consequences of her actions. I had given her every opportunity to be honest with me, and she chose to deceive me. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair, It was about the lies she told and the love she pretended to give. But despite the satisfaction, I also felt a strange emptiness. Revenge had consumed me, and now that it was over, I was left with a sense of loss. Not just for the marriage, but for the person I thought she was. I had loved her with all my heart, and she had thrown that love away for a brief, selfish fling. Yet, I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. Life had a way of moving forward whether we were ready or not. In the aftermath, I took some time to reflect. I focused on my career and my personal well-being. I started going to therapy, not to dwell on the past, but to understand what had happened and why I had allowed myself to be so blind to the signs. I also started to reconnect with old friends, people I had neglected while I was wrapped up in the life Emily and I had built. They were supportive, offering me a shoulder to lean on when I needed it most. Through all the turmoil, I rediscovered a part of myself that I had lost, the part that had been so consumed by the relationship that I forgot about my own needs. I went back to my hobbies, started working out regularly, and even took a few spontaneous trips. Slowly, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. Months later, I ran into Rachel, Nathan's wife, at a coffee shop. We had kept in touch after everything had gone down, and I could see that she, too, was beginning to heal. Her divorce had been a tough one, but she had taken control of her life again. We shared a quiet moment of understanding before going our separate ways. I didn't know what the future held, but I felt at peace knowing I had done what I needed to do, for myself and for the justice I had sought. As for Emily, I never heard from her again. She faded from my life, and with her, the pain of her betrayal. I didn't need to follow her downfall anymore. I had moved on, and it was time for me to find happiness again, this time, on my own terms. But I couldn't help but wonder, did she ever truly regret what she did, or was I just another man she had hurt along the way? And would she ever realize the magnitude of her mistake, the consequences of betraying someone who loved her with everything he had? One thing was for sure, she would never have the chance to hurt me again. Question for the audience: do you think James's revenge was justified, or did he go too far in making Emily face the consequences of her actions? How would you have handled the situation differently? Let us know in the comments.